1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to Scuba Confidential. We're on episode 6, is it 6? In all the excitement,
is it really?
I've kind of lost count really, guys, if I'm honest. 6, 7? What are we on?
Episode 6.
Episode 6,
Excellent.
Thank you. I knew Louise would have the answer. So thanks to anyone who's made it this far. I was going to offer cake again, but we got it.
Don't mention the cake.
The cake, that went a bit viral with the cake back on episode 2 or 3 or whatever it was, so we'll skip the cake incident again. But thanks to anyone who's listened, supported us.
Thanks for your support.
Yeah, and who's made comments via the various social media platforms that we use. And again, at the end of the episode, then we'll give you some links you can go to. You can find us. You can subscribe. Do keep subscribing, liking. Give us a nice review on iTunes and on Stitch. Share our stuff. It all helps.
Like and share.
Yeah, we do this for fun, and it's nice if we can get out there to lots of people to hear. So this week's going to be slightly different. I know it's been a week or so since you guys probably heard the last episode, and we've managed to talk someone else into Bear Studios for this one, who's going to be another voice to add to the mix. But first of all, we would normally go to what we've been up to, but because it's a special occasion this week, we're going to go straight to Lou with the news. So Lou, what have you got?
Okay, so first up on today's news is it's quite a light-hearted one actually, this one. Octopuses have been given the drug ecstasy.
Isn't it octopi?
Might be. To become more social and to try and hug each other, a study has found. I know, it's crazy. So researchers at the Johns Hopkins University in the USA have said that the drug affected the creatures in a similar way to humans. So, MDMA, which is the actual drug, commonly known as ecstasy, it can alter moods and it releases serotonin into the bloodstream and it makes people feel good.
So how do they give it
sociable.
to an octopus?
I've no idea actually. It might have been liquid form or they dropped it into the tank or
Imagine
gave
that.
them some glow sticks, who knows.
Give some music, some happy tunes.
A bit of happy hardcore. But yeah, apparently it had the exact same reaction on these, on this octopus and than it does on humans.
Do you think it started lifting its tentacles up and waving it in the air?
Reaching for the lasers.
Big fish, little fish, cardboard.
It could have been. Basically, they were exposed to a liquefied version of MDMA, which they absorbed through their gills. And the study found that all 4 creatures spent more time in the area with the other octopus than they had been before being given the MDMA.
So they're just becoming more sociable because they're the highest kites, is that what you're telling me?
Basically, yeah. They actually, according to one of the professors, they were actually hugging the cage and putting their mouth parts on the cage. And it's very similar, apparently, to how humans react when they're on ecstasy. They're more tactile, they're more huggy kissy, loved up, essentially. So it's really interesting, just looking at the sociology of the octopus compared to humans, different behaviours and characteristics. Who knew that you could give octopus ecstasy?
Yeah. And they're doing a whole project on this. They're spending years giving drugs to various bits of aquatic life, which seems like an interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking it. I think it's great. I think it's interesting, but
it's a bit out there.
It is a bit out there. Yeah. So this week, folks, is something slightly different because we've got a 4th person with us in the studio. Unbelievably. Now, you've heard us talk about this particular chap. He's like a mythical figure in the world of local diving around here. And he's a friend of ours and he's Lou's husband, Mr. David Holmes, known as the Bear. Round of applause,
Woo-hoo!
please.
Thank you very much.
Oh, hello there.
Glad to be here.
So for people who don't know you, you better tell them a little bit about yourself and how you got into diving and what you do. What is your role in diving these days?
Yeah, no worries. So I've been diving since 2002, so quite a while. I'm an instructor and have been for just coming up to 10 years now. So I'm quite proud to be an instructor, like bringing some new students onto the world of diving and passing on my knowledge. I've dived in a load of places around the world as well. So I've been lucky enough to places in sort of South Asia, Southeast Asia, Caribbean, sort of Malta. I think my favourite, I still love UK diving, big advocate for UK diving, and Scapa Flow has got to be my favourite place. I was fortunate to do some technical training a few years ago, which enabled me to explore the wrecks in Scapa Flow, and I've dived with Marcus up in Scapa Flow and when he used to work there. It's been good. Obviously I know everyone here as well, we're all good friends in the dive centre. Know Louise fairly well.
You're
I've been
right.
married to her for quite a while. So.
I've never seen her before in my life.
But yeah, me and Marcus go way back as well. I think we've done a lot of our training together. So.
I think if you rewind back to when we were both young, then we did our instructor training probably, was it 12 years ago now? We did our initial AI bits of that, 13 maybe, I can't recall. But seems like a lifetime ago, but yeah, we go back a bit. In fact, the first time I met you two guys, for the benefit of anyone listening who doesn't know us particularly well, I was very cold and hungry, and I'd got out of a training dive at a place called Gildenberg, which is out near Peterborough, and it was a miserable day, and you two guys came up to me and offered me a ham sandwich. I'd never met you before. You offered me a sandwich and a cup of tea, and I thought, yeah, these two people are all right. They can go. They're in my good book straight away. And exactly. Took pity on me as I peeled myself out of a dry suit, and that was over a decade ago. That was a good 10-15 years ago at least. So yeah, we go back a bit. So we thought we'd get you in today, Bear, because we're going to have a talk about something that I think you'll certainly have some input on. We did a little poll online and to talk about dive etiquette, as in what grinds your gears with diving, what gets on your nerves, what annoys you that you see in dive operations or divers, specifically really other divers. And we want to sort of caveat this conversation by saying we like divers, we like diving. We're not here just to have a whinge. This is more of like a Room 101 type deal where we're just going to talk about some of the stereotypical things you see in diving that might grind your gears a bit, get on your nerves.
A humorous rant.
A humorous rant, yeah. Well
don't
said,
be those people.
Yeah, don't be those people. And sometimes we are those people. But we did a poll online and we broke it down essentially into two bits. There are more we're going to talk about, but the two that sprung to mind as the biggest ones were reef wrecker and boring boaster, and it came out fairly even. It's almost a Brexit situation here, where we've got 50.
Don't mention Brexit.
Yeah, I know it's an old can of worms, but we've got like the time we were recording this, it's 56% reef wrecker, 44% boring boaster. So it was pretty close, and that may change by the time this actually goes out. It might be more people have voted in a different direction, and there might still be a chance to vote. We can even reinstate the poll and gather some more data and put it back up on the Facebook page. But do get in touch if there's things you think that we've missed as we go through this and you want to add. So we're going to talk a little bit about dive etiquette. We'll break it down into sort of categories, and I'm sure the guys here sat around the table will have something to add to this. The first thing that annoys me as a trip leader, as an instructor, or even just as a buddy, is when you've got a delayed diver. And by that I mean, okay, the boat's leaving the harbour at 9, be at the boat at 10 to 9 just to make sure your gear's on board, etc, etc. And it's 9:05 and the skipper's waiting to do ropes off and head out, and they're still not there because they're busy having breakfast or something like this, and whatever is happening isn't important to them. So that's quite a common one. You guys must have had experience of that. Have you been on holidays, trip somewhere where someone's been late?
Many times.
Many times. Now to me, I don't know, it just seems a little bit rude because you're compromising everyone else's day with that.
Yeah.
Where it's not just you, it could be a dozen, 2 dozen people on a boat waiting to go. And that's just holding up their day as well. You're compromising them. It's not just about
You don't want to be that last one getting on the boat.
No.
Because everyone stares at you and they're all thinking,
Where
We've
were
been
you?
waiting for you.
Yeah,
We've been
shit,
waiting for
yeah.
you. You had the same instructions as us.
yeah.
Yeah. It always occurs to me when these people, particularly when I was working full time as an instructor or a guide or a trip leader or whatever, it's like, how do they cope in normal life?
Yeah.
You know, these people, if they have to catch a train or a bus to get to work, how do they ever do it? Because the bus driver's not going to wait around for an extra 15 minutes and hold the bus for them. but somehow they feel with the boat or something like that, it's okay.
I think maybe if
they
they're
can
on
do that.
holiday, they're in a more relaxed, blasé kind of approach to things.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, just drag my heels, I ain't got to bother because I'm on holiday. And that sense of urgency might go out the window with some people.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there is this sort of old adage in diving that, when divers go on a dive trip, they leave their brains at the airport. And you do see that from time to time. It happens quite a lot. And I think what's often missed is the things that go on behind the scenes as a trip leader or someone planning a liveaboard boat for several days or a day's trip on a boat somewhere. Things happen behind the scenes. So in the case of a boat, just as this one particular example, we may have agreed with the harbour master or the other boats that are in the harbour at, say, Stromness, that we're all going to get out of the harbour at a particular time. You can't all just go at the same time. There's a radio contact and you're all trying to leave at the same time. And if Bob decides he's going to turn up 20 minutes late, that throws out the schedule for all the other boats that are trying to either get in or out of the harbour safely to do that.
Conditions can change, can't they? And,
exactly, yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I think that attitude though can come all the way back to their training actually as well. Because if people are trained correctly and they listen, and a good instructor will actually encourage the person and help the person and show the person what they should be doing as a part of their dive day.
Yeah.
Because training isn't just a very focused situation in a swimming pool and an open water environment. A good instructor would actually brief other aspects of normal day-to-day diving as well, post-training. So I think some of that can come from there as well. Yeah. So if we mollycoddle too much at the training stage, I think by the time a diver gets in the real world, I think that could sort of start breeding those kind of divers actually.
Yeah, I think it's a responsibility thing, isn't it? And I know you, David, when you train people, then you're always kind of preparing them and thinking of the bigger picture when you do it, as opposed to seeing it as some sort of tick box exercise, which is really, really good. People who are late for briefings always used to grind my gears for the same reason, and there's all sorts of reasons people might be late for a briefing, but often it's just they've just messed it up for whatever reason. The number of times I used to have to wake up people who are on the sun deck or remind them to analyse their nitrox, or they just roll in a little bit later. And again, it's one of those things where behind the scenes, and I may have even mentioned this on previous episodes, there's a lot of planning goes into where a boat is going to go.
We touch on this, didn't we? I think on the first episode.
Exactly, where the boat is going to be in a certain place at a certain time because of tidal movements, other boat traffic, or it may just be, in my case, I used to sometimes speak with trip leaders on other boats in the area. When are you going to go to Richelieu Rock, for example? Because we'll time it so we stagger, so we're there half an hour before or half an hour afterwards. So there's not 50 divers on the same bit of reef. Mm. And suddenly, because delayed diver has decided he's not going to turn up for 15 minutes, then that means that throws out the schedule. And again, it's that impact not just on him or me or whoever's running the boat, but there's the divers on that and the divers on the other boat as well who's suddenly going to have a busy dive. So all these things make a difference.
I think it can work. I think it can work the other way as well at post dive. So after the dive, when you get a good dive briefing, particularly on a boat dive, you're supposed to come up within an hour, say. Like Egypt is often an hour, isn't it?
Oh, stick to the plan.
Yeah, stick to the plans.
Yeah.
So if you've got people who are actually remaining underwater for too long, it can also cause problems. The same as Marcus said, that boat needs to get away for the next site.
Yeah.
I was on a recent trip to Weymouth, and a really lovely day, and we're on a dive boat, a real mixed bag of people, but we were told hour, on the surface.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is really important.
Yeah.
So the weather turned on this dive trip, and for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm absolutely awful with regards to seasickness. It is my little Achilles heel. Everyone can take the mick at me for that one, that's fine. But we came up from the dive after an hour, and we were sitting on the boat for an extra half an hour waiting for a guy because he was just down there and decided to want to go and catch some crabs.
Brilliant.
Right? Now, I'm not in a very good mood at this point. There's some photos circulating on Facebook of me looking particularly rough. So, from a personal point of view, that's I find that quite selfish. But from a skipper point of view as well, I think similar to what Marcus just said. So.
Yeah,
it's impact, isn't it?
It's impact, and it's not just the logistics. You're then stressing out whoever's running that boat, if it's the skipper, the trip leader, whoever. Because if someone says they're going to be an hour and 10, it's like, are they okay?
Mm.
Yes.
At what point do we need to start thinking about emergency procedures? So that delay both before and after a dive makes a big difference. So And we talked
It's like
about
that at Stony as well, though, isn't it? Because like in between breaks and stuff like that, listening to what your instructor's telling you what time to be back, stuff like that. Especially like open waters, they're busy day, aren't they?
That's right, yeah.
Done.
And we've all had it. You know, we've got, if you think of an inland training site like Stony, and you need to be out of the water at say 4 o'clock. At 10 o'clock in the morning, myself, David, whoever's teaching, and you guys as dive masters, we know we need to kind of get them chivied along and in the water. The students perhaps don't appreciate why we're kind of egging them on to get ready and get dressed and get into their dry suits as opposed to standing eating a bacon cob. But we know that a compromise here is gonna end up with us not perhaps getting what we need to get done later in the day and getting out of the water in time. So all those things have a knock-on effect. Yeah. So delays grinds your gears, doesn't it? Boat slob. We must have all come across a boat slob before. The ones that used to be the biggest bugbear for me, people who don't look after where their own equipment is on board the deck of a boat somewhere, or sprawl out into other people's areas. Okay, I'm a bit OCD with these kind of things, but when I set up my gear on a boat, I then clip my mask with the straps that goes across the front of my BCD or wing or whatever it is I'm using. All the stuff is in my area. I know exactly where things are. And you're going to get those boat slobs, and you must have seen it, one of you guys, I'm sure, when you're on a trip somewhere on a boat and the trip leader's trying to get the people into the water, and they're like, where's my weight belt? Where's my mask? Where's this? Where's that? And it's
Whose
like,
gloves this?
whose gloves that? And it's like, well, you know, here's a tip: when you exit the previous dive, why not? You've had that whole surface interval to work out where your stuff is, to analyse your gas, to put your stuff exactly where you know where it is for when you. That's your preparation time. In between that surface interval is when you can go back over the previous dive and prepare for the next one.
I mean, 9 times out of 10, you get a basket given to you anyway.
Yeah.
You know, on most certain liverboards, you get a basket. You put everything in there.
Yeah.
So, you know, if anyone hasn't been on liverboard, then just expect that and use it. It's not difficult.
It's underneath the little bench, nice and tidy, nice and compact, and it's explained at the start of the week or however long you're on the liverboard for. That is your little area. That is your stuff. You know, that's your basket for your stuff, and you can't hold people's hands though, can you?
No.
That's the frustrating
And I recommend
thing.
just spending 20 quid and get yourself a little bag for a boat. You can get little dry bags for your electronic gear.
15 quid.
And then you can get just a nice sort of, I don't know, like almost like a rig bag, a fin bag or something with holes in it that drains. So you can put your wet gear in, job done. So it's really not a difficult concept, really. There's plenty of gear out there that can help you if you need it.
Yeah.
I think some people like to be quite territorial, don't they? But in the respect that, as in terms of spreading out and just like you say, just leaving their stuff everywhere, and even on the sun deck, you know, just kind of spreading out to hell with everyone
It does get
else.
busy, though, especially on a dive boat.
It
doesn't
does,
And
yeah.
you know, when you're
mindful,
new to liverboards and stuff, and you know, it's surprising how busy that dive area, kitting up area is.
Yeah.
There's so many. Everybody's there, aren't they? Putting the gear on.
It's literally all hands on deck.
It is.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you've got the crew there as well helping you.
Yeah.
And it does get like this whole area just full of bodies trying to do the same thing all at the same time.
Wetsuits flapping in the wind, smacking you in the face.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful as well, because you put your head down, you've got something walk past the cylinder, can bang you on the head, you know, and
Yeah. I mean, boats like that, they're kind of like they can be the nicest thing in the world. If you've got a really nice group and everyone is kind of paddling the boat in the same direction, metaphorically, then it's really, really nice. It can be the best time of life. But it can be like a floating asylum if you've got someone who's not respectful of other people's space and this kind of stuff. It can be a nightmare, and that can go for little things great over like a week's trip. If you've got someone who's always unplugging your camera at a charge point, or you know, not respectful of your space in a cabin or something like this, it can flare up and
First day or
tempers
two,
fray.
you can let it go, maybe, but by the end of the week, you want to kick them overboard.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
might be lovely people,
I've got probably about a couple of hundred episodes I could do just purely on people who've wound up, myself and people who've worked with me over the years, and some behind the scenes thing. David will know this, and Lou and Ian, but there is an abbreviation called TTA that gets used by dive guides somewhere, which I'm not going to repeat because it's a family show. But normally behind the scenes, the guides have a little sweepstake at the beginning of each week on who the TTA is going to be on the boat that week based on the check-in procedure. And if you want to know what TTA stands for, you'll have to message in on Facebook or Twitter, and I'll direct message you. So we've got the boat slob. We've all come across the boat slob before. Another one, sort of stereotype as we were thinking about it, was sort of the oblivious diver, the guy who's just not aware, or girl who's not aware of what's going on. So perhaps they arrive at the briefing, they're there for the briefing, but none of it seems to sink in. And when you get them into the water, whether you're leading them or you're their buddy, it's like the briefing never happened. They perhaps disregard entry or exit procedures. They go and do something completely different, go off at a tangent under the water, these kind of things. Or one of my favourites, when I used to work as a guide full time, was not abiding by turn points and things in the briefing. So I used to always be, you need to tell me, guys, when you get to 120 bar, I need to know. We all have that agreement, okay? And I'd give them a hands in, make sure it had actually sunk in. And you'd be part way into a dive and you'd suddenly get a tap on the shoulder and a 50 bar, and I'm like, we're at 28 metres here, son. This is not the information. You should have told me where you were 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. So you are going to get those sort of people who just think it's just, it's Alton Towers really, and I don't need to. You don't need to be aware of what's going on. That also ties in with buddy contact as well. I think there's more of a tendency for people to be slack with that, if you like, if they're in clear blue water, of course. You get that false sense of security.
So what you're saying, that they disappear from each other? Or?
Yeah. I think I think it's a cognitive thing with people, with divers and their perception, that if they can see their buddy, everything's okay. All right. If you think of where we cut our teeth as divers in the UK, if you're more than a couple of decent fin kicks away from your buddy, sometimes you're not going to be able to see them. You're going to lose contact. So we've all kind of grown up in that environment where you need, by necessity, to be next to someone. And certainly within most open water courses, and certainly the ones myself and David teach and you guys work on as dive masters, we're always drumming into people, you need to be no more than an arm's length or two from your buddy, because if something does go a little wrong, if you are that person who suddenly finds yourself a bit lower on gas than you thought you were going to be, you need them by your side. We're not going to be there when you're qualified. But in kind of clearer water environments, and you must have seen this when you were in the Red Sea, Ian, on one of your trips, you can be at somewhere like, I don't know, Jackfish Alley, and see one person with a camera and then their buddy is 30 metres away at the other end. Yeah,
I can think of one of the dives that we were on Shark Reef, and there was somebody there with their camera and they were on their own. Their buddy was a long way away.
Yeah.
And you think, well, so who at first instance you think, well, who are they with?
Yeah.
They appear to be on their own.
Had a bit of a funny turn,
and then they kind of joined in us. And you're like, well, yeah, but who are you with? And then later on, they've drifted off. They're back with their buddy again. And maybe that's the problem with taking photos a lot, is that you're concentrating on what you're seeing through the screen or something like that, rather than keeping an eye on your buoyancy. And so maybe a point is for new divers, maybe not use GoPros and stuff like that for a while until they're better with the buoyancy.
Especially in a new environment, if it's your first time diving anywhere, just leave the camera on the dive deck. Just don't take it in with you for the first one or two dives. And I think even if you don't have a camera, sometimes if you're in a new place, especially somewhere like Egypt or somewhere where it's nice and clear and it's all a new kind of like thing for you, you can be, oh god,
I
this
never
is
get
amazing,
that with a
and
concert.
you're not paying attention.
Do you ever get that with a concert and they're looking at the they're watching like whoever the artist is and whatever, and they've got the phone up, looking at the phone, and the concert's happening over there.
Yeah, it's a frustration, isn't it?
Watching it through a lens.
Yeah, exactly, which sort of defeats the object. I mean,
it's nice to share your experiences while diving, because sometimes you've got parents and loved ones and everything. You want to sort of share what you've been doing. But I think it's just you've got to concentrate on what you're actually looking at yourself as well. Because you're there, you've paid the money. It's a beautiful environment to go and see, and I think you should concentrate on that really.
And it's safety first as well.
Definitely.
And why I always tried to explain it to people when I was guiding them for separation things was I'm there as kind of as a guide, as kind of a pace car to kind of just go at a steady pace and take you around the dive site. And if you stick with me, I'll show you some things as well. If I see something interesting, I'll show you. So your job is to stay with the guide, not the guide's job to stay with you. They're leading the dive. So you need to, I think, be respectful of that. Follow the guide wherever you are in the world. Try and stay level with them, at a safe distance to them when you're moving around. And within that, just as my pet peeve has got, while I'm getting them off my chest, this is very cathartic.
Pop on the couch.
Is people who then overtake me when I'm leading a dive.
No way.
I've had it before when I've been just gently wafting along, as you would if you were guiding, turning occasionally, is everyone okay? Have a look at this, have a look. And someone will come past me and kick me in the head and just keep going. And they'll just be in front of me by 5 or 10 metres. And of course...
Then get lost.
Well, bless them, they don't know the dive site. I might know that around this next corner there's going to be a strong current and I'm planning to turn, but they keep... and come back the other way, but they keep going. And I've had it before, actually. There's a friend of mine who I won't name, who I was with in the Farne Islands, who did just that. And he came just finning past me very slightly, and I could feel the current picking up. And I was like, okay, sort of tapping on my tank, trying to get their attention. They kept going, got to the edge of the reef wall, whoosh. Next stop, Holland. Off you go. See you later, mate. Just watch them disappear.
Said that SND.
Slowly. It's like the end of Die Hard when Hans Gruber's falling off the building.
Classic film.
So it's not that the person is bad. They've just misjudged it. They're oblivious to the situation and what's going on around them.
Things do happen quickly, don't they? I remember at Stony, my buddy was right next to me one minute. The next minute, they had a panic, and they're going to the surface.
Yeah. It doesn't
really
take much
quick.
time,
It
does
can happen
it?
very quickly.
Yeah.
With currents and things like that. Certainly, when David and me have dived in Komodo, you can suddenly get like a down current before you know it. You're thrown in that situation. So, we're all only human and stuff happens. And it can happen very quickly, like you say. Yeah. But I think getting back to the oblivious diver point, a lot of it can be avoided just by listening and not just hearing things during the briefing, but actually listening and thinking, well, there's a reason why this is being explained to me. It's to protect my own.
And that's all going to be part of the plan of the dive, isn't it?
Yeah. That was one thing that struck me on probably the last trip I did. As when we went to the dive briefings, I took a slate to every dive and I was listening and scribbling down some notes. Okay, this is the entry procedure, this is the exit procedure, we're going to surface here, we're going to do whatever it was we were told. I was noting down. I think I was the only person doing it. There were, say, 20 divers on the boat. It was only me who was doing it. I don't know what the other divers' level or experience was, but for me, it's like if you're in a different environment and you're abiding by their rules, you have a responsibility to pay attention.
It's a good point.
And be part of that.
Have a slate on you when you dive.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of examples, but they're where, for example, we were instructed to surface next to the reef and then swim along the surface back to the boat along the mooring line, because you often get Zodiac traffic and you need to be visible to them rather than just popping up around the back of the boat. So it's one of those ones where just a little detail like that is a safety issue you need to be aware of. So all those things.
I think on there, just like to make on the buddy contact again as well. I think we need to be really respectful of who you're buddied with, because sometimes you will go abroad if you're not going with a big group of people and you might end up with someone just out of the blue. And the guide's got a buddy with someone. I think you need to be very respectful of each other as well. I mean, I've got a bit of a bad experience once in the Maldives actually, where just an old guy I was buddied with, seemed okay. Done a lot of blue water diving, just a warm water diver rather than the UK, which is no biggie. And we went on a dive, and I don't know, about sort of 3/4 of an hour into the dive, we were down about 28 metres. My air was getting a bit lower than his, sort of 80 bar, I think it was. And I thought, okay, well, we need to start kind of working our way up to the reef. Turned round to this guy. I'm still with the guide at this point. Let him know what was going on, and basically his hand signal underwater was that I was to go up and he was going to stay where he was.
What?
So yeah, it's
As
a
your
true,
dive
true,
buddy?
yeah, as my dive buddy.
Wow.
True story. And I just thought, well, okay, well, I'm not going to risk my life.
No.
I was an experienced diver at the time, so I kind of made my way up a bit shallower just to keep myself safe. While still keeping an eye on him. I think as a dive pro, I think we're all the same. We always keep an eye on people.
You can't switch
You
off.
can't switch off. It just happens. I think.
Wasn't that a drift dive as well?
It was a drift dive, yeah. So it's quite a situation. And yeah, cut a long story short, basically he kind of left me to do my own thing, and then I left him to also do his own thing. So I think you need to be a bit respectful of people. Everyone's different air consumptions. Everyone's doing different environments, different type of diver, and different experience levels in particular.
Yeah.
And you need to respect that. Everyone's paid for a day's diving, right? Whether you do 5 minutes more than someone else, does it really matter? No. I don't think so. So I think just on this, it's sort of a little bit out of the scope of what we're talking about, but
No.
I think buddy contact, being a good buddy.
It's okay.
Let's be
Sometimes we
good
do
buddies.
off tangents.
But he was
Yeah.
oblivious to your safety or your
Oh,
situation.
100%. Yeah. And he was oblivious to his own safety. That's the most important thing, I think, as well. Is if he was oblivious to his own safety, because if something had gone wrong with his gear, he'd lost me at this point.
Right.
I was watching him all the time on the dive. Whether I'd have gone down and helped him, yeah, of course I would. But it's still a situation. It's a story I often tell to my students, actually.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite an important one just to say, don't be that guy.
Yeah.
And you might be the weaker diver. Or just weak. I don't like that phrase, but you know what I mean. You might be the less experienced, something that you need to end that dive first for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Than the other person. So yeah, just be a good buddy, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Well, next time it could be them. Can it?
100%.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Didn't he have the audacity to suggest diving on a 15 litre or something?
He did indeed. Yeah, we'll skate over that point
Because
because the language wasn't good at that point.
I was on land at this point. I got the whole post-mortem.
No, and again, I think we talked about it before. There's this misconception that gas consumption is directly related to his skill, and it's not. There is some overlap in it, but it's something different. And that guy to just say, "Well, I'll see you later," he obviously doesn't understand redundancy, doesn't understand the buddy system, and he left you in a situation where do I stay down low on air, or do I gamble on going up on my own on a single tank with no redundancy?
Yeah.
And that's not a position that a respectful, decent buddy would put you in.
No. You do see people. There's some people on holiday trips that maybe a bit of a sense of entitlement, I think, and it kind of then adds this oblivious sort of diver nature, I think, which isn't a healthy thing. We're all there to have fun and be safe. And there's a good friend of mine who calls me Safety Sam.
Hey.
The best type of fun is safe fun. So if he's listening to this, he'll really like that, I think.
Need to get that on a t-shirt.
Fantastic. Right, next kind of thing we earmarked to talk about was actually flagged up by someone I think we all know. Ian doesn't know, but certainly the other guys sat here know. Is Mr. Michael Bateman, Mick Bateman.
Hi, Mick.
Hi Mick, if you're listening, the man, the myth, and his thing was photo junkies, as in, and then he put this on the Facebook page, the camera hog who barges in to get his or her shot, and I'm sure we've all experienced that before.
Yeah.
You're hovering, just sat there, mid-water, observing perhaps a nudie brank or an eel or whatever it is you've found, a particular bit of wreck that's interesting you, and you're having a look in a crevice, just hovering there, contact-free, and they come barreling through with a camera or something like that. And that, I don't know what it is with cameras that gives them a kind of a license to do some of these things, but it seems to be quite a common trait where if someone's got a camera underwater, it's a bit like giving someone a mobile phone. They just kind of go off with it and do their own thing.
They can't control themselves.
Yeah.
Almost.
I mean, and I'm not being down on underwater photography or cameras of any particular description, but we're in a world where everyone and his dog gets a GoPro or a underwater camera, perhaps before they've got the skill level to go alongside it, as one of you guys said earlier. And I think they're brilliant devices, but how about learning to dive properly first before you have one of these things?
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't pass your
Get
driving
buoyancy
tests
right.
and then drive around city centre in rush hour while on the phone, you know. So if you're going to be diving a site where there's perhaps strong currents, was more challenging, you know what, leave the GoPro on a stick on the boat for this one, rather than get spat out into the blue.
I think it links back to this Instagram obsessed kind of society that we live in now, where we have to keep showing other people what we've done, and it's all about how many likes we can get, and we've got to impress other people. We want to show other people what other people think, and we kind of like you say, you kind of lose track of why you're diving in the first place, and maybe working on a few skills and getting comfortable and confident in the water, and just leave that to another day. There'll be plenty of time to show pictures of, like you say, a manta or whatever, and it's
I think you don't have to do it every time. Sometimes I mean, it's not. Don't get me wrong. I do a bit of sort of videography. I do it for my own memories, but try not to do it all the time, because you kind of end up losing sight of actually having the memory yourself, rather than just something on a.
Well, that's
especially
right.
if we're on holiday together, we want to dive together, and because we don't do that often, do we? And it's nice to kind of share the experience and look at each other and go, "Wow, that's really cool," rather than.
Do you know what?
Me kind of catching up with David with the camera.
The memories are so much better most of the time than the footage you're going to get.
Yeah, definitely.
I still remember the first time I was lucky enough to see a manta ray, and I don't know how many hundred dives I'd done at the time. I've been waiting for years to see one, and that image in my mind of when it first hove into view is a really murky dive and it's sort of really turbid water. And when I first saw it coming into view like a Vulcan bomber, I was like, what the hell? And that is burned in my memory.
They're big.
And the go, it was about 4 metre from wing to wing, 4 metres. And that is burned in my memory. And the footage wouldn't be as good. And I always think with GoPro footage, what people, if it's for your own benefit and it's for you, I always think of it a bit like someone's wedding video, where they're really interested. It means a lot to them, and that's great. And they probably really enjoy it, and they can watch it and then get something from it. No one else wants to see it.
Yeah.
No one else
they might go,
wants.
That's nice.
No one else wants to see it. So if you're ever on a boat somewhere and you've been filming with your GoPro, I'm saying this as someone who was a guide for a lot of years. If you're ever on a site somewhere you've been busy filming Nemo for 10 minutes, when it's lunchtime, if the guide is there having a dinner, don't show them the footage, because do you know what? They see that same Nemo every day of every week for a 6-month contract. They don't want to see that Nemo again. They know the Nemo. They're on first name terms with that fish. They don't need to see your footage when they're having a rare bit of downtime. And we know you mean well, but we're just not interested. Share it with your friends. Share it with people who are perhaps non-divers in your life, wherever it happens to be. But But tying in with what grinds the gears bit that Mick originally brought up, a camera's not, and this is just my opinion, there'll be people shouting at their stereos or into their headphones or whatever it is, however into their MIDI systems, their gramophones.
In the wireless.
Can you get this on vinyl?
Yeah, for the hipsters. I might struggle with a top knot, but the camera, isn't a license to just ride roughshod over the dive site, and it doesn't mean you can disregard body contact either. One other thing that kind of ties into that is also when you get it with people trying to get shots, is when they use the camera as a reason or an excuse to perhaps touch or damage the environment they're in. And I've even seen it. I remember there's a dive site. It was called Kotashai Pinnacle, which is probably one of my favourite dive sites on the Simlin Islands. And there's a spot there, and I saw a guy, because there was no contact with the reef, and because there was things, obviously you could damage reef, and there's stuff that can burn you and damage you on the reef as well. And a guy, he was so obsessed with getting a photo, he was swimming around with one glove on like Michael Jackson, just so he could hold the reef with one hand to get his shot. And it was just, if that's the extent you go into, the camera doesn't justify you damaging the reef to get that shot. Photo junkies, we've all met them.
I think some people view a camera as another piece of dive equipment, when it's not.
It's just an accessory for certain times,
There can be a little bit of a tie-in as well, I think, between the photo junkie and the boat slob. And I think my favourite thing is when the person on the boat with the biggest camera, who then instantly, the moment they get on the boat,
they're very special.
They're very special, but they put the camera in the bucket of fresh water, which is for everybody. Everyone's little cameras. And I'm usually there with my little GoPro. And I remember turning up on a boat last time I went on holiday, and I just saw this massive, great camera in there, and I thought, where am I going to put my GoPro? So I just kind of dunked it in there, really, really, really carefully, and the dirty looks you get. because you've dared to touch that big camera in the bucket that's certainly not just for them.
Like it's a newborn baby.
So I think it's the same with like charge points and that kind of thing. You know, you can't charge your phone up or anything because you've got 18 camera batteries being charged up. You know,
and you sit down to breakfast and there's
sort out who's GoPro's whose.
Kit on the table.
You have to meticulously look after every single O-ring on your camera.
The whole saloon is taken up with their stuff all laid out. You're looking for a spot to sit down and read a book. It's not happening.
I think if any camera junkies out there, and I really respect, really respect photography, do a bit myself, but just come on, guys, just have to think about the people around you. That's what I'd like to say on the matter.
Yeah. That kind of me first attitude ties in with one that actually we were going to bring up, and it was a hot favourite on the Facebook page, which was the boring boaster. There is a slightly less child-friendly name for that person who we've all met as well. He's the guy who, on the surface interval, either before dive, after dive, is always going about how great they are, how great their dive was, always bending your ear on every surface interval and every time before and after the dive on how good they are, why you should listen to them, and rerunning through every single dive they've done in their life with you in graphic detail. And you guys must have met someone like that. Have you got any examples of that?
Many.
Are we allowed to? I'm not sure.
I think for the benefit of people listening, there's a lot of eye rolling and
change
kind
the names to protect the innocent. But
Divers like to talk about diving. That's fine.
Yeah, which is fine.
We've got some brilliant friend group through. I think we all have through diving. Obviously, we're all sitting here. People I'd never have met if it wasn't through diving. Apart from Louise, I probably would have met her. But divers like to talk about diving. But I think it's just how you go about it sometimes. And I think that can be anything in life. But it does get a bit frustrating as an instructor as well. There's a moment everyone gets windy. You're an instructor on a boat. You do get people trying to impress you and telling you stories, and then how they would do it better as well, which is always great fun.
Passive aggressive fun.
There's always someone who thinks they're the expert on the boat. I think the ones that always make me laugh is the ones who try and talk dive numbers with the guides on the boat, and they'll be like, well, I've done 100 and it's always precise, 117 dives precisely, and they have to, because if you check in, the guide just basically wants to get a ballpark figure at check-in of where you are. Have you done 50 dives, 100 dives? What are we kind of talking? If you getting your logbook out and kind of going through it, I have 117, and there was this 10-minute one I did here, but we had to abort. Does that credit? It's like, well, it's not really what we're after here. We're just trying to get a gauge of where you are. And there has to be some, I don't think the people who do that have any kind of gauge of scale. If you're working in the industry full time, you're doing 100 dives a month, you're doing 1,000 dives a year. Whether someone who's boarding your boat has got 87 dives or 117 dives is neither here nor there to us really. When we're at the check-in stage, or you were telling us what you've got in terms of your dive numbers, it's just not important.
You were on a liveaboard recently, and did you have any boasters on that particular trip?
I'm trying to think whether we did. I was on a liveaboard, you just with a whole mix of people, aren't you? Of all different calibers,
the melting pot,
and and obviously you don't know all of them. But you just meet all sorts of all types of people.
It can be frustrating sometimes, can't it?
After a while.
On the other hand, it's interesting to hear about other people's experiences. Suggestions for dive destinations that you're not necessarily thought of or considered before. Sometimes that can be really open your eyes out, can't it? But I think it's the manner and approach in which some people kind of approach conversations, or there's that air of kind of competitiveness sometimes, isn't there?
Oh, definitely.
Your guy with the air, consumption. Well, maybe you should try this. Maybe you should shut up. There's a time and a place sometimes.
That was one of the phrases.
It's very much It's how you go about things, and it could apply to any walk of life, not just diving. But no one likes a big head.
No.
Exactly right.
says us four.
Come on, we've all done it a bit. It just happens.
And like I say, on pretty much every episode, we're just idiots talking about diving. We're not here to say we represent like how diving should be. We're just giving our opinion on stuff.
And we're certainly not perfect. I've done the photo thing myself, so I'm not going to. It's
exactly right.
We're not perfect.
No.
Yeah. And one of the final bits we were going to go on to, and this was another, we've left the two kind of biggest ones till last. We had Boring Boaster, and then we've got Reef Wrecker and Animal Hassler. And this is a big one. I mean, it really winds me up when people damage the environment they're going to visit. We're there as visitors, we're there to observe it, to soak it up, not to cause destruction or leave any damage when we do it. And with Reef Wrecker as well, Samantha Howlett, Sam, if you're listening, who's a friend of mine who I was involved with teaching a good decade or so back, and I'm really showing my age there. Hopefully we'll get her on for a chat at some point. But she put on the Facebook page, can Reef Wrecker include people who just have to get too close and scare everything away? So that kind of happens too. Mm-hmm. You'll get the person we talked about earlier who's either completely oblivious with their fins and doing damage to, a table coral or something really delicate like that. And I remember you saying, Ian, you saw something like that when you were on the last Liverpool trip.
It was quite an eye-opener, actually, to see somebody do that. And beautiful part of the world, lovely clear water, white sands, beautiful corals. And then somebody comes past you, taking a photo, and they crash into the coral. They lost the buoyancy and bang, straight, and kicking it all up and stuff like that. And you think, you've just gone so close, and without pausing, just to get that photo, you just destroyed that coral.
It's probably been growing for 300 years.
Well, it takes forever to grow, doesn't it? And to see somebody do that and then just clear off like didn't mean nothing.
Yeah.
And they obviously been through the courses, this being aware of the environment and buoyancy skills and stuff like that. But they actually, should be aware of the environment. The whole point of diving is to respect your environment, and it's there.
Continue from water, of course. Yeah.
It is, and just it's hideous to see.
That ties in actually with an email we had. Craig Morris, hopefully Craig's listening as well, emailed into us. Hi Craig, yeah. He's emailed in and talked about his diving in Fort Lauderdale and said they have licensed like a lobster season out where they can go and take lobsters, as people around the part of the world we live in, they'll go and shoot pheasants. There is like a lobster season, they can go and hunt them out in Fort Lauderdale. And he's written in to say the trouble is the damage they do within that. He says, I've watched all levels of diver, from open water right through to instructor, break live coral by laying on the reef or paying no attention to where their fins are whilst concentrating on trying to catch the lobster. And he's had many an argument on the boat regarding behaviour, and I can sort of relate to that. I personally don't eat fish or seafood because I've seen some of the damage the fishing industry does. If people want to, that's their decision to make. But if you're damaging the surrounding environment in order to get that particular lobster you think you want to have for your dinner, then that's out of order in my book. And that's a really nice email from Craig. So thanks for sending that in to us. The other thing within the Reef Wrecker and Animal Hassler is the people who scare away pelagic life. And I've had it before when I've briefed perhaps on manta encounters and said, and I used to put
for those that don't know, pelagic.
So kind of open water creatures that come in to essentially to feed, to mate, to clean when they come into
mostly big stuff.
Okay. Things like oceanic white tips, things like manta rays, whale sharks, stuff that goes out in the open ocean and comes in very occasionally into the shallows to do that kind of thing. And so for manta rays, we used to do a very specific briefing on the boat, and I was quite draconian about it, to be honest, about distances from the particular manta rays, positioning, not flashing cameras in their face, not chasing after them, and certainly no contact. And it was at the stage where I'd say to people, look, you have to understand there is a zero contact with these animals. If I see you stroking the manta ray as it happens to go past and wiping that protective layer off it, that will be the end of your diving for the week. I will dismantle your gear and put it in the engine room of the boat.
Under padlock.
Under padlock. Do we have an agreement here? You know, all you have to do is not touch it. The manta ray is not going to come up and hug you. You just have to not touch it. You know,
it's not a petting zoo.
It's true.
It's not a petting zoo.
It's not for us to interfere. It's us to observe.
Yeah,
we're in their environment.
Yeah,
well, exactly.
And enjoy.
If I had a group of guys on board and I was speaking to them personally, I'd say, look, just think of them like strippers. They're beautiful, but you just mustn't touch them. Do you understand?
Think of them like strippers.
Great analogy.
That's my favourite thing I've heard now.
Yeah.
Don't touch the stripper mantis.
Yeah. Okay. You can wolf whistle. You can enjoy them.
Does
just
that mean
don't
you
touch
give
them?
dollar notes?
No, you might. You get
Chuck some plankton into their
as they swim past.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But you'd always get in that situation. I've saw it no end of times where a manta would come past, and generally the behaviour of them is they'd circle round a few times. If you stay still and you relax.
Well, there you go. They're asking for it. Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it like that. Temptresses. But they'd circle round a few times, and I'd always be just put my arms out just to gesture to people. Just stay just behind me. We'll just hover here and wait, and it will be back. It might disappear just slightly out of view. It will be back. If it wants to come back, it will come back. And there'd always be one. There'd always one who'd chase after it with a GoPro on a stick, and then they just take off at such speed. It's the manta ray. It's gone. It's and you won't see it again. It will be scared off by someone running towards it. So that animal hassling thing is really annoying.
It's quite upsetting to watch as well as other divers.
Yeah.
Not only is it spoiling everyone else's encounter,
It's
also
stressing the animal out.
Yeah, it's distressing for everyone and the creature. Yeah.
Oh, and while we're on, I
David's
think
pointing to something.
David's looking quite excited. I think he's got a story.
I do, yeah, about the sort of Reef Wrecker animal hassler story. As a few years back now, me and Lou on holiday in Cuba, I think it was.
Cuba, yeah.
Cuba, yeah, cool. And the background of this, I don't know if anyone knows, but in the Caribbean, lionfish are a bit of they're a pest fish now. They're not native to that area. The aquarium trade in the US, they have lots of lionfish, but lionfish basically decimate the tank. They're brilliant hunters.
Yeah.
Lots of lionfish ended up in the Caribbean, basically. So there's too many lionfish. I really like them, to be honest.
It's the ecosystem.
And we were just on a dive, just a small dive boat, and there's a Canadian couple who are really nice, and Mrs. Mrs. Canada had. Aside from the story, she had the biggest.
BCDs.
No, she was floating all the time.
And her husband had a mouth to match as well, didn't he?
But,
he liked to talk,
yeah,
as they say.
But just to paint a picture, anyway. So we ended up going on this dive. They're all right, but they were a bit obsessed with hunting. And on the surface, I was getting a bit concerned because they were basically asking if they could hunt the lionfish.
Right.
And the dive guy was like, "Yes, you can, but let's just be a bit respectful." Of course, that bit didn't happen, did it? So we're down on the dive, and I was actually taking a photo of a lionfish. As I said, I really like them. And all of a sudden, at the corner of my eye, Miss Canada comes flashing past me with this big spear and just stakes this poor lionfish straight through the heart.
She nearly took David
Nearly
out.
taken at me at the same time.
Nearly had his eye out.
Yeah, in more ways than
What with the hook?
And I always remember, and I just
Literally bolted out of nowhere, just this spear gun.
Lou was next to me. There was just bits of reef, fish, blood, everything just going everywhere.
Visibility
Just,
went down to kind of Stony Cove,
And I was just taking a photo, just like, yeah, okay, I won't be doing that anymore then.
No.
And they got back on the boat and bragging about it.
There's a whole reef they could have done it on.
It's not the yes, they're a pest and they're allowed to be fish and they eat them, which is quite good now. But the way they went about it was just a little bit out of order. But it's just it's one of my favourite stories in diving.
Yeah.
You had to be there, to be honest. But hopefully you can picture it a bit.
That's
And
fantastic.
that kind of leads on to one of my pet hates, which isn't on our little tick list that we like to kind of go by, but people who decide at the end of their dive to clean their dust cap with the air from their tank on a very small boat. So on said trip to Cuba, one of their fellow Canadians was next to me, and we were on a small rib. There's probably I think there's about 8 of us on the rib with the 2 dive guys. So we're all close quarters, and when you come up from a dive, not everybody, but some people's ears can be a bit sensitive, you know. You
I can't hear a thing usually
exactly.
after a dive.
You know, you kind of like, just adjusting to being on the surface as well, and there might be a bit of wind blowing as well. And right next to me, I kind of like bent down to just tuck my mask into my BCD, and he's there, this guy with his tank, and it's all because he hadn't stored his dust cap somewhere dry, that it had got wet and rolling around in the dive, you know, in the rib amongst everyone's feet, and he's there, and it's such a high pitched, high pressure noise.
Burst your eardrum.
It's really, really annoying, and I hate it. It really, really, it makes my fists clench. I'm not going to lie. It's just really inconsiderate.
Yeah.
You know?
Has this guy not got a towel or something he can
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing.
You should have seen his budgie smugglers on my word.
I don't want to consider that.
Not nice.
Well, that's just wrong on 3 levels. The first one is it's inconsiderate for other divers. If it's going to be blasting in your earlobe, then it's not good. The second thing is, if you've got standard A-clamp regs with one of those attached dust caps, when you do that, all you're doing is deflecting the water into your first stage, which sort of defeats the object. Yeah. And the third one is, when you first board a boat after a dive, if it's a standard liverboard boat, don't wear budgies, particularly not you, Ian. But the guys who are the crew on the boat are immediately, as soon as you've dekitted, starting to connect whips and fill those tanks. If they hear a sudden burst of air like that, they're not thinking, there's matey boy cleaning his dust cap for his. They're thinking one of the whips has worked loose, there's a leak from the compressor, there's a malfunction, and they'll sprint over the deck just to find this doofus blasting his dust cap, thinking that this is a problem with the whip or the compressor or something like that, and the connection's been lost or an O-ring's gone pop somewhere. So it's just wrong on a few levels.
It's wrong.
It's just wrong.
I just wanted to get that one out there. So
it's gone wrong in the headspace. Do you know what? We've done quite a while talking about this. Is there any, while we're getting our gripes off our chest in this little therapy session we're having here, is there anything else people want to raise? I'll tell you.
There's too many.
There's too
We'll store them on the
we'll
record.
store 'em.
We don't want to appear kind of inherently negative or
No.
you know,
Not,
kind of too
not.
self-righteous. Everyone's got a gripe, and whether it be a big one or a small one.
Contact us and let us know your gripes.
Exactly. We're always open to suggestions, and you know, we always want to know what our listeners are thinking as well. So.
Yeah.
So that sort of wraps things up, really. If there's any gripes you think we've missed, you want to email us about, you want to tell us on the Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, you can contact us in all kinds of ways that you'll find out about in the outro bit of this podcast. Get in contact with us. We appreciate you listening. We hope you've enjoyed our rambling for the past sort of 50 odd minutes, and we hope you've enjoyed meeting the bear for the first time. You never know, he might be back.
Thanks for having me.
That's right. It's been a pleasure as always.
It's been emotional.
It's been emotional.
It's been a journey.
The J word's back, Lou. Right. Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time on Scuba Confidential.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Scuba Confidential. We really appreciate you tuning in today. We'd like to clarify that we're in no way affiliated with any agency or organisation. All opinions expressed during this podcast are our own. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at ScubaConfident1, Instagram and Facebook at Scuba Confidential, and if you'd like to support us via Patreon, go to patreon.com/Scuba Confidential. Any contribution is really appreciated. Additionally, if you have any suggestions for topics or discussions, just let us know at scubaconfidential@gmail.com. Many thanks to Plunkett Music for the groovy tunes, and we'll catch up next time. Until then, keep diving.